Family meant everything to him. But
My birthday's not even for 3 days.
they viciously murdered his wife and cunningly framed him for murdering his own wife.
Letty.
He was forced to leave his home and save his life. They thought he was finished, not knowing he was a gladiator getting ready for worst revenge.
Drill. Anything you say can and will be used against you.
Welcome back to Paramount Recaps. I don't have many subscribers, but your single comment is a ray of hope to motivate me.
Cars. What? Stop the cars. Now.
Two Russian thugs quietly break into a guy's house, snatch him up without his wife even noticing. I guess she was too into her Netflix show, and take him to see their boss, Oleg Malenko. Now, Oleg's not exactly a people person, and he's definitely not here for chit-chat. He orders the poor guy to open up a nearby safe. Spoiler alert, it's as empty as your fridge on grocery day. Oleg, clearly not a fan of surprises, gets on the phone and starts talking about collecting a debt. Since the cash isn't there, he decides to settle for something else. And by something else, he means shoving the guy into the safe and, well, killing him. Tough crowd. Meanwhile, Brian Mills is off doing something a little more wholesome. He's picking out a giant stuffed panda for his daughter Kim's birth. He's probably thinking, what could go wrong with a cute, cuddly gift? Little does he know, Kim's dealing with her own drama, staring down at a pregnancy test like it's a bomb about to go off. Brian shows up with the panda just in time for Kim's boyfriend Jamie to make his grand entrance. Kim teases Brian, calling him predictable, but Jamie's quick to point out that Kim's no better. Apparently, she's stuck in a smoothie routine. Same store, same flavor, every time. Creature of habit, much? Brian leaves with the panda. He's probably wondering why he bothered in the first place, feeling a little guilty that Kim wasn't into. But hey, can't win them all. On the way out, he has a quick chat with his ex-wife. They talk about Kim, and Brian tries to score a dinner invite. Lenore says no at first, but then shows up at his place anyway. Talk about mixed signals. While Brian's mid-dinner prep, Lenore drops the bomb that she's unhappy in her marriage to Stuart. She even kisses Brian, but Brian, being the gentleman he is, tells her to work things out with her husband before diving into anything messy. I mean, good on him for resisting temptation, right? A bit later, Brian's out on the golf course with his buddies when Kim calls him up. She wants to meet at a diner, and it's clear she's got something big on her mind, like maybe she's finally ready to spill the beans about the pregnancy. But just as she's about to, some kid at another table starts throwing a tantrum. Classic. Kim chickens out and instead asks for advice on something way less intense, like should she get a puppy? Things take a sharp turn when Stuart shows up at Brian's apartment, looking all serious. He accuses Brian of sleeping with Lenore, which Brian flat out denies. Stuart's not having it and tells Brian to stop hanging out with Brian. Cool as ever, agrees and assures Stuart that they're just friends. No secret romance here, folks. Then, Brian gets a text from Lenore asking him to swing by his place for some bagels. He grabs the bagels, only to walk in and find a bloody knife on the floor and Lenore's body on the bed, her throat slashed. Yikes. In a classic wrong place, wrong time moment, Brian picks up the knife, big mistake, and just then the cops burst in. They try to arrest him, but come on, this is Brian Mills we're talking about. He takes him down, cuffs him instead, and makes a quick exit through the window. Cue the dramatic chase through the streets. Brian's dodging cops left and right before finally slipping through a hatch door and escaping into the river like a stealthy ninja. Brian gives Kim a call from a payphone because why not go old school? While she's at Lenore's place, looking for a sweater. He breaks the awful news that her mom's been murdered and tells her he's being framed. He promises to keep her safe, but Kim's understandably shattered, breaking down in tears. Yeah, it's a lot to take in. Hot on Brian's trail is Inspector Frank Dotzler, who's busy piecing together the crime scene and paying Stuart a visit. Stuart's just gotten back from a business trip and is called in to ID Lenore's body. He's heartbroken, or at least pretending to be, and he gives Dotzler the lowdown on Brian's dangerous past. Cue the dramatic music. Meanwhile, Brian sneaks into the morgue to see Lenore's body himself. It's a heavy moment as he touches her face and takes a hair sample because, you know, DNA testing and all that. The cops are still on the case and track down her car at a parking garage. Using the car's GPS, Brian follows her trail to a gas station. He sneaks into the security room, watches the footage, and sees a masked man kidnapping Lenore, throwing her into a van. One of the guys even has a star-shaped tattoo on his hand. Classic bad guy move, right? The cops show up at the gas station and quickly figure out Brian's already been there. They arrest him without much of a struggle, but Dotzler's no fool. He knows Brian's up to something. In the back seat of the police car, Brian slips out of his cuffs, knocks out one cop, and forces the other to keep driving. What follows is another wild chase that ends with the police car plunging down an elevator shaft and exploding. Of course, Brian walks away like nothing happened because he's Brian Mills. Dotzler gives him a call, urging him to give up because the whole city's after him now. Brian's response? Good luck. I mean, could he be any cooler? Brian meets up with his buddy Sam, who's busy running tests on the hair sample. Sam's got Brian's back and offers to help however he can. Brian, with that laser focus, tells Sam he's heading to the funeral next. Because, well, the guy's got a plan. Lenore's funeral is a somber affair, with everyone coming to comfort Kim and Stuart. Sam goes up to Kim and tells her to stick to her usual routine. He taps the button on his jacket, revealing it's a hidden camera. Kim understands what's going on. Her dad is watching, and she smiles. She decides to leave Stuart's house after noticing all the security he's posted around. A detective follows Kim to the convenience store where she always gets her favorite smoothie. She picks up the bottle and finds a note that says, "Drink me now." Without hesitation, she downs the whole thing in one go. Later in class, Kim starts feeling sick and rushes to the bathroom. That's where Brian is waiting, pulling her into a stall. They share a hug, and he gives her an antidote to fix the nausea. He had spiked her drink on purpose. During the brief moment they have together, Kim confesses she's pregnant. Before they can talk more, detectives burst in, but Brian is already gone. Brian's escape isn't peaceful for long. Some Russian thugs catch up to him and force him off the road, causing his car to explode. One of the guys even jokes about grabbing a drink to celebrate. Brian doesn't let that slide. He borrows a car from a passerby and tracks the goons down to a liquor store. There, he goes on a rampage, taking down each thug one by one until only the last man is left, the one with the star tattoo on his hand. Brian corners him and demands answers, but the guy would rather die than snitch. He grabs Brian's gun, shoves it in his mouth, and pulls the trigger. Brian eventually tracks Stuart down at a beach house. Knowing Stuart is behind everything, Brian takes him somewhere secluded and starts waterboarding him for answers. Stuart confesses that he got caught up in a bad business deal with Oleg Malenko, and Lenore ended up paying the price because Stuart couldn't repay the debt. His plan was simple. He was counting on Brian to discover the mess and use his skills to make it all disappear. Stuart also warns Brian that Malenko is no ordinary victim. He's a highly trained killer, just like Brian. With Sam, Kim, and some of Brian's friends on board, they have Stuart set up a meeting with Malenko. The meeting is set at a downtown building, but Brian uses the opportunity to fight his way through Malenko's henchmen. Eventually, he confronts Malenko himself in his apartment. The two face off, and Malenko nearly manages to shoot Brian, but Brian gets the upper hand, fires 2 shots at him. Before finishing him off, Malenko reveals that Stuart played them both. Brian leaves him to die slowly. Meanwhile, Kim, in Sam's van, stumbles upon texts from Lenore's phone that mention a specific location. She texts Brian and tries to reach him through his earpiece. Stuart, realizing what's going on, grabs Kim and shoots Sam in the neck. He takes off with Kim and calls his pilot to prep the plane for a quick escape. The cops find a van with Sam, who's wounded but still alive. Brian, sensing Kim is in danger, hijacks a car and races to catch up with them at the airport. At the airport, Stuart is preparing to flee with Kim in his private jet. Just as the plane starts taking off, Brian drives onto the runway and rams the plane's nose gear, forcing it to abort takeoff. Stuart comes out of the plane, holding Kim at gunpoint. In a tense moment, Kim manages to get free, leaving Stuart to face Brian. Brian realizes that Stuart set up Lenore's murder to cover his tracks and proceeds to beat him senseless. Just as Brian's about to finish him off, police sirens approach. Stuart smugly says Brian can't kill him now, but when Brian looks over at Kim, she shakes her head, silently asking him not to. Brian decides to let the law handle Stuart, knowing he'll probably get off easy with a good lawyer. But Brian leaves with a warning. He'll get Stuart if he ever gets out. He knocks Stuart out and leaves him for the cops. Later, Brian meets Dotzler, who reveals he figured out Brian's innocence thanks to the bagels still being warm in his apartment. He knew Brian wouldn't have bothered buying bagels if he had been planning to kill Lenore. With that, Dotzler closes the case on Brian. Brian then joins Kim and Jamie at a pier. He tells them that no matter what they decide, he's there to support them. Kim mentions that if the baby is a girl, they'll name her after Lenore, a choice that Brian approves of.